Okay, so if you take a look at that image, that print screen of the space at the conference room at A&D, the best way to normally do this type of volumes is obviously to work in plan and then to extrude a simple polyline. No? So the question is, how do we actually create that polyline? Well, the best place to do it is on the top view. So I'm going to double click on the top view. Notice in the print screen that the volume is exactly located in the 0, 0 coordinate point. So I need to start there. And we did this last class. I'm going to click on grid snap to be able to snap to that point. And I'm going to do a polyline. So I'm going to type polyline. But before I do anything, which is something I should have mentioned a second ago, we need to make sure that we're working on the proper units. No? So if I type units, and this is very important for all of you, you need to make sure that you're working on feet, and then we're going to insert feet and inches. So those two decisions have to be the first things that we do before we start modeling anything, but also in our case, our conference room in A&D. You know? So feet and inches. Now we know that whatever we introduce, let's say I want to do a line of 5 units, that would be 5 feet. No? Okay, so I'm going to actually do a polyline. I'm going to start in the 0, 0. So I just zoom in close to the meeting point of the red and green line, which are the X and Y. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to step on ortho. So click on ortho so it's drawing vertically perfectly. And it says 28. And just to make sure, I'm going to introduce also the symbol for feet. No, I'm going to press enter and click with the left button of our mouse. And then 28 again. Feet, click. And here what I can do is just go, I know it's a square, so I'm going to go there and click to the grid point, snapping, or I could just say 28 again, but you know, I'm also going to close at the end. No? Okay, I created basically a square. I could have done square and say 28 and 28 starting the 0, 0. Obviously for everything, there are many ways to go about it. Because I did a polyline and I selected once, it's a complete set of lines connected. So that's the definition of a polyline. I'm going to explode that because I need to redefine that line, which is the only one that has some variations from the square. No? And I noticed in the print screen there's 4 spaces of 7 feet. No? So there's different ways to do this. I actually can introduce the command divide. No, and I could say how many segments. I know it's 4, and that's going to give me 4 points. No, correct. So that's one way of going about it. I could actually start, you know, for example, creating a line. I could also do, now that I'm thinking, instead of dividing by 4, I can divide it by 8. That could be even better. I'm going to divide the command. Select that line and press 8. 8. And why am I doing this? Just because of the shape, it's being split by 2, and each of them will step out 3 feet, as you can see in the print screen again. So now I can do a simple line command. Snap. So I need to snap to the points that I have here, and those will be points right here. Again, I normally recommend to snap to several of these so you can work with many of them at the same time. But for this case, you need points, so you can snap to the points you created with the division. Now it's 3 feet, and click. And I can start creating, for example, lines, no? From this point to that end point. Repeat command from this point to that end point. Okay, so I could potentially select the 2 of these. What I did is select one and then press Shift to select the other one and copy. I copy this one time. Again, to pan while I'm copying, it's just right click in the mouse, and then again here. Be careful when you have near track things, you have to be more precise because it kind of tries to snap to any point in the line. So, whoop. Okay, notice there's only 3 of those, so that's fine. I can actually start deleting the points that I created and all of the other stuff that I don't need, and I can create a line that goes from this endpoint to that endpoint. So this looks pretty much the same as I have in the print screen, but the only difference is that these are actually separated lines, no? The same way I did an explosion before I said explode, and I exported a polyline into multiple lines. Here I can join all of these lines, join command, to make one single polyline. I know it's a polyline because if I select it in one point, it is all connected. Perfect. So if I see this from the 4 views, I can sense and that this is exactly snapping to the 0, 0 point there. Fantastic. It's all in the C plane, which is basically in the horizontal plane. And it's well put together in the sense that it follows the dimensions that I'm describing. No? If you want to make sure, what I'm going to ask you to try to do is also to go to one of the tabs up here that says drafting, and then you have horizontal dimensions here and vertical dimensions. So you can click and start placing dimensions here. Okay. And then I could potentially place all of these dimensions as well. Okay, I could also place a horizontal dimension from here to here up. And I could potentially place, I mean, it's quite obvious because it's a division, but from here to here in. That would be it. These are all horizontal dimensions. I could potentially create also a layer and call it dim, like dimensions, and place all of those dimensions by selecting all of them together and pressing shift and right click on them, change object layer so they turn red, which is the layer of dimensions. I could even turn it off and on. No? I could potentially put this curve in another layer, change object layer, and call it like working lines or something like that. And I could turn it off and on. And now the only thing I need to do from that I describe in the print screen is an extrusion of this polyline. Now again, it has to be a polyline because if it's separate lines, it wouldn't create a solid. How far up? It's 16.5. So I'm going to select that. Extrude is the command. And I have to place 16 feet and then 6 inches, which is half. No? If I go to see this as a render, I can, well, probably render is not the best option, just shade it. I can see the volume there. Now notice a problem I did, for some reason it went down. So I'm gonna Control C, go back and extrude this in the proper direction, which is vertically up, 16 feet, 6 inches. There you go. Again, not down, I just had to make that clear. Now I can also place a dimension from the front view. I go to drafting here, vertical, and just click and click to make sure this is 16.50. I can also place that into the dimension layer by right clicking. And now I'm gonna go to the perspective to see how this looks. Okay, I'm gonna create, in the volume, I'm gonna place it in another layer, right click, change object layer, and rename it as base project. Okay, so now I can turn off and on the dimensions. I can turn off and on the base project and the working line, which is still there, as you know, from Rhino, that keeps things going on. No? Also, you can double check that things are correctly, 16.5 here, 28, sounds good, and everything fits properly with the print screen. Okay, so this is very important for all of you to do now during the next 20 minutes. Again, one of the most important things is 0, 0, starting point, and then that you follow the precise dimensions that I am placing on the print screen. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the recording here.